Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, wars and rumors of wars, more talks with Iran planned in Doha, while threats continue from all parties about escalated military action. Plus, hope on a horseback, a ranch dedicated to helping traumatized souls. And Troy Miller from the National Religious Broadcasters taking a strong stand for Israel. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl.
And I'm Paul Strand. There's a tense quiet in the Middle East today. It seemed like the U.S. and Iran were about to continue negotiations in Doha, but that just got called off in the last few hours.
Meanwhile, Israel and Lebanon signed an agreement moving them closer to a peace deal, and the Israeli military marked 1,000 days since the October 7th war began. Here's the latest on these and other stories. CENTCOM released footage of its strikes on Iranian missile storage, coastal radar, and mine layer capabilities over the weekend, following an Iranian drone attack on a commercial vessel in the Strait of Hormuz. Later, Iran targeted a second ship and U.S. interests in Kuwait and Bahrain.
If the Iranian regime thinks for a second that President Trump is going to stand by, while Iran continues to attack international shipping without a response, or our bases without a response, they're sadly mistaken.
U.S. Ambassador to the UN Mike Waltz told Fox News Sunday that 143 nations agree with the U.S. that it's a violation of international law for Iran to charge tolls and fees to operate the strait.
So they're completely isolated here. President Trump's not going to stand for it. And meanwhile, we continue to move ships out by the dozens every day, and world oil prices are not just stable, they're dropping.
President Trump issued another warning on Truth Social Sunday, threatening the Islamic Republic of Iran will no longer exist if he's forced to return to military operations. A U.S. official said the two sides have agreed to stand down for now and continue talks, but Iran has not confirmed. Meanwhile, Israel and Lebanon signed a U.S.-mediated agreement in Washington late Friday, bringing the two countries closer to peace.
As I said, today is the first step. This first step sometimes is the hardest one, but it's an important one and the one we've taken together. And we're very grateful that this has come about.
The trilateral framework we signed today is a first step on the road to restoring Lebanese sovereignty and territorial integrity, securing a permanent and final cessation of hostilities.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described it as an historic accomplishment and said the U.S. and Lebanon recognized Israel's right to maintain a presence in southern Lebanon as long as it's needed for its security.
We will continue to hold it until Hezbollah and the rest of the terrorist organizations are disarmed and until no further threat to Israel is posed from Lebanon. I want you to know this is a massive blow to Iran and Hezbollah.
Standing by a map of Lebanon and the Israeli border, Netanyahu described a program testing the Lebanese army's abilities to disarm Hezbollah in two areas, which Israel will then verify. At the last minute, Qatari officials announced U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will not meet with Iranian negotiators today in Doha after days of fighting between the two sides.
You know, oil prices are way down. We hit $69 today. It was higher than that prior to the denuclearization of Iran fight that we have, which we're doing very well.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz says if Iran attacks Israel, it will spark the third Iran war. It could happen within 2 days. My directive to the IDF is to prepare for a blue and white operation in Iran. Israeli President Isaac Herzog said Israel dreams of peace.
But Iran's desire to become a nuclear threshold state is a tangible threat to Israel. And Iran's audacity to dictate the future of Lebanon undermines the possibility of moving towards peace and security.
Monday, Israeli commanders marked 1,000 days of fighting for Israel. The series of wars that began with the October 7, 2023 massacre by Hamas has seen fighting with Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and with Iran, which has launched more than 1,000 ballistic missiles at Israeli civilians. 1,000 days and 1,000 nights that we have been fighting in one of the longest, most complex, and most demanding wars we have ever known. And the fighting continues both in southern Lebanon and in Gaza, where Israeli intelligence reports Hamas is using the October 2025 ceasefire to build new rocket positions and take control of humanitarian goods. Israel is carrying out near-daily strikes against Hamas leaders and terrorist infrastructure. Over the past 3 months, IDF engineering forces worked to seal a nearly 10-mile tunnel in Gaza, which had about 80 living spaces and served as a Hamas command and control center under a residential neighborhood. The IDF used more than 30,000 cubic meters of concrete to do the job. Hundreds of Gazans took to the streets last Friday, demanding an end to Hamas rule, better living conditions, and a dignified future. But armed Hamas operatives threatened the demonstrators. Coming up, mixed signals and tensions rising. Analysis with CBN's Paul Strand. Welcome back. I'm joined by my colleague, Paul Strand. Paul, what are your thoughts on the Strait of Hormuz?
Isn't this so confusing? It's like I just thought that Iran had decided to have talks with Oman about how to manage it, and then they go and shoot a couple of ships out there, and then the U.S., which is all about the peace deal, it seems, and they're fighting, and the whole weekend was filled with fighting. And then supposedly Iran at the last second says to Trump, well, we want to talk. And then they say, no, we don't. So I'm confused as can be. I think also here in Israel, people are so confused because they're saying, what is Trump doing? I mean, for one thing, we can't let the Strait of Hormuz, we can't let Iran own it and be bombing ships all the time and stuff like that, or taxing them. I think, what do they want, $2 million a ship to go through there? Nothing like that's ever happened before. No international waterways like that. And so I think, in Israel, there's a little bit of panic about is President Trump being,
bamboozled?
Bamboozled by the Iranians.
Yeah.
And I've heard advice here in Israel that Israelis chill out because President Trump, everybody here has said he's the best president that Iran has ever seen in America. Maybe we should trust him some. Yeah. And I personally think he's maybe really saying, let's give peace a chance. I mean, supposedly in the deal, the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, Iran will eventually get hundreds of billions of dollars. And he's thinking, well, if they think long term, maybe they're going like, yeah, let's have a decade of peace here where we pile up the money, we can rebuild all our systems, we can secretly keep working on nukes, things like that. And then, but there's this other thought that what he's trying to do is get the gas prices down, get America through the midterms, because if he loses the midterms, if the Republican Party goes down in massive defeat, he really can't do anything. So to preserve his own power is also a very positive thing for Israel. And so he may just be putting the brakes on and saying, let's get through this election, then I'll deal with the Iranians.
Yeah, well, and I think for Israel, they're looking at it and saying, look, if Iran really wanted peace, they'd stop paying the proxies to try to destroy us and get rid of us. And, and here's Israel, just though on a positive note, signing this deal with Lebanon. I mean, that's amazing. It shows where Lebanon is really coming from, or at least some of the people in the government. Sure. Mm-hmm. They really do want peace. They don't want to fight with Israel. It would be a whole lot more prosperous if they, had trade and everything else together. Mm-hmm. But it's really Hezbollah, and who does Hezbollah belong to? Iran.
Right.
So Iran is the occupier, not Israel.
And I think a lot of people may think, why if the Lebanese don't like Hezbollah being this big power there and Iran having so much control, why don't they just boot them out? And I think people have to understand that this is tens of thousands of troops in Hezbollah, and they're so heavily armed.
Yeah.
Now, the U.S. is one of the big backers of the Lebanese army, but they decided a long time ago, because they think Hezbollah has so infiltrated the Lebanese army, they would never give them any heavy arms. So we are now asking the little weak Lebanese army, go in there and boot out Hezbollah, disarm them. It's like, how do you, if you've just got a little tiny gun and they've got missiles and rockets aimed at you, how do you convince them to give up those missiles and rockets. So I think it's a lot more complicated than people realize, and that Hezbollah is a lot more stronger than the Lebanese army.
Yeah, for sure. Plus there's the point that, okay, Hezbollah is Shiite, and there are Shiites in the Lebanese army. So you're almost, I heard an expert say this the other day, you're almost invoking a civil war. You're asking Shiites to fight Shiites, and that is like a no-no. So it's going to be complicated.
Now, what do you think, though? The other big thing is Hamas and Israel.
Yeah.
And right now, Israel, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying they want to go up from 50% control of Gaza to 70%. And here's Hamas, meanwhile, saying, everybody wants them disarmed. But I think if I understand it right, they're saying, well, we'll put down our arms, but only after Israel goes. And I look at Israel as maybe the only force that could take their arms away. So what do you think about the whole situation right now in Gaza?
Well, Israel has been striking. It's been clear they've been trying to rebuild. We said that in the stories. And also, the Prime Minister said in the beginning, everybody said, oh, give us just, leave Gaza and we'll give you all the hostages back. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. And then, a year or two later, they take more and do the same? No, it doesn't work that way. And I think, Israel is pretty savvy to the fact that they really helped the Gazans. They gave up land 20 years, before, 18 years before October 7th. They gave them land, they gave them businesses, they gave them all sorts of things, and they got October 7th in return. So I don't think Israel's going to be tricked again.
Yeah, and it's disturbing that right now, with Israel wanting to take more control there to stop the terrorists of Hamas, and President Trump seems to be saying, no, I've got this big giant board of peace, international and all that. Israel, cool your jets. And I'm a little bit worried that if Israel cools its jets, Hamas is going to turn its jets back on full force.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens and pray.
Amen.
Up next, animal therapy, horseback riding bringing healing for wounded spirits.
Near the ancient road where locals say the Good Samaritan traveled, horses are helping heal the invisible wounds of war.
One Israeli rancher is restoring hope to trauma survivors with the help of Christian friends and American cowboys. Joshua Swanson brings us the story.
Just east of Jerusalem sits a place dedicated to healing. Many believe this is the area where Jesus talked about the Good Samaritan, a story of compassion for the wounded. Today, those same themes come to life at Ruthie's ranch.
Hi, new guy.
For Ruthie Mann, horses have always been part of her story. As a child, she dreamed of one day having a ranch of her own.
I was like 5 years old and I asked my dad, every ranch, stop, I want to do a ride. Since every year like this, and it was my dream.
Ruthie's ranch serves more than 350 children facing trauma. After October 7th, soldiers began arriving as well, including a former student severely wounded when his tank crew came under attack.
One of the kids that were not born, but raised by me since he was 7 years old, he wounded badly in the tank. The whole crew of the tank were killed. And he was out of conscious for a month. And the first thing that he did after he came back home, after nearly 3 months, he came here to the ranch to see the horses. And he's still getting treatment every week.
Soldiers can have unseen wounds, and for many, the horses became central to their healing.
When I first get him to the arena with the horses, he was so aggressive. I'm not saying anything, but he sees the horse like running crazy. And he said, whoa, what's going on? Because this is the best mirror for him.
The horses responded to the soldiers' stress.
And now we can take this scene and stop working and say, okay, let's start to get ourselves calmed down.
For security reasons, we're concealing this soldier's identity, who after years of service in an elite intelligence unit began struggling with the trauma of war.
I started having a panic attack and a nightmare. It's very funny, but like when some child are riding on a skateboard, it reminds the sound of the missiles.
Wow.
Like the
Really?
Yeah.
And so what would happen to you physically?
You doesn't sleep much, you doesn't eat.
Yeah.
You don't want to get off the bed, but this is behind me.
Working with horses helped him regain something he thought he had lost.
When I come here, I naturally relax.
After multiple deployments following October 7th, Lieutenant Commander Elia found refuge at the ranch.
Without this place, I don't know what I can do.
Standing among the horses, he sees the ranch offering something desperately needed by him and other soldiers.
This place is medicine for us.
As the need grew, help arrived from an unexpected place: Christian cowboys from America.
October 7th.
Yeah.
The war breaks out.
Yep.
And you decide you need to call the cowboys.
I had some buddies that I'd grown up with. And I said, guys, hey, because Charlie's hardcore. Called them and I said, guys, hey, would you come? And they all dropped everything they were doing. Literally, hay bales stayed in the fields, and they just all came.
Charlie, what makes you hardcore?
That's a good question. Look at it.
Perhaps it was because these cowboys made headlines. When others were fleeing the war, they were headed in to help.
We were the only non-Jewish people in that line waiting for security. It goes out on some social media or something, and by the time we landed in Tel Aviv, we had people walking up, shaking our hands, wanting to take pictures with us.
After arriving at Ruthie's ranch, they found more than just a construction project.
We turned into a family, instantly almost.
Together, they began building a resilience center for IDF soldiers using stones gathered from the surrounding hills.
So all this stone was found or grabbed from
on the hillside, yeah.
On the hillside. What is it about this place that's so special?
Yeah, I mean, we've helped to build over 100 and something farms, and I think this is probably one of the most spectacular pieces. And I think because it's helping heal.
When someone from another country come to here and say, I appreciate you, it just fills the heart.
For Ruthie's husband, Chaim, the ranch's connection to a famous biblical story isn't a coincidence, but a sign.
Actually, the road that you see over here is route number 1 that connects Jericho to Jerusalem.
Okay.
Actually, the story of the Good Samaritan happened just here.
For Chaim, it's about helping warriors move from survival mode back to life.
There's something special about this place.
I can tell you that this is not us. Yeah. This is the guy up there. God really did something special in this place.
More than 2,000 years after Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan, soldiers are finding healing, and strangers from around the world are becoming family. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, the Judean Hills.
When we come back, finding friends and support, CBN Israel reaches out to single mothers in Israel.
In his public ministry, Jesus prioritized helping the vulnerable, women, lepers, those outcast by society. Well, thanks to our partners, CBN Israel continues his work, reaching out to a group that needs a lifeline, single mothers.
The young woman in our next story found herself in a bad place, mentally and emotionally, with 2 young boys to raise. Thanks to our CBN partners, she's back on her feet with a support network. Take a look.
I was in such bad mental state. I had a lot of anxiety. There wasn't even a small hope, because it's like living in hell. It was very difficult.
For Maria, escaping an abusive relationship was just the first step. Raising 2 boys alone as an immigrant in Israel, she faced overwhelming trauma and isolation. But through CBN Israel, she found a lifeline.
It is hard to describe how great the help I received from CBN was, financially and emotionally. I was invited to a group of single mothers. I knew I wasn't alone, and that made me feel so much better.
Thanks to your support of CBN Israel, single mothers across the land are finding the community, relief, and deep soul healing they need to build a better future for their children.
I know I'm not alone. I know that God is with me, and also His angels, all the people who have helped me. Thank you for supporting me.
You might think religious broadcasting in the U.S. is facing a downturn, but our next guest says the opposite is actually happening.
Chris Mitchell interviewed Troy Miller from the National Religious Broadcasters about who's tuning in these days and the importance of standing with Israel. Here's their conversation.
Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm here in the studio with Troy Miller, who's the president of the NRB, National Religious Broadcasters. For those that don't know, Troy, what is the NRB and what do you do?
Well, first of all, Chris, it's great to be with you. The NRB is the largest advocacy group for Christian communicators, really anywhere around the world. So in North America, we fight hard for anybody who's in Christian community. That's broadcasters, radio and television, filmmakers, publishers, authors, podcasters, and of course, all the churches today that have media, their rights to stay in the public space. That's something we really work on. And then we also work internationally for those same rights. So we call it our international advocacy, where we focus in on a number of things, including, again, that right for access, but also all of the Christian persecution, religious hate, anti-Semitism, and things that go on around the world.
Yeah. How would you define the status right now of Christian communicators in the U.S. in particular?
Well, look, Christian communicators in the U.S. are strong. We just finished some polls in the last couple of years. We did some research with the Barna Group and found out that 60% of Americans tune into Christian media at some point on a pretty regular basis. And Christian media users tune in 3 or 4 times a week. We also found out that radio is strong across the country, radio AM in particular, but radio reaches 90% of the U.S. markets there. But here's the number we really liked. Gen Z, everybody talks about Gen Z. Gen Z is tuning into Christian media, 64% of them. They were the highest demographic, followed by millennials at 58%. So we had some pretty encouraging numbers come out of our survey.
That's a little counterintuitive for what people would have expected.
It is counterintuitive, but I think when you think about when we drill down a little deeper and asked them why they tuned in, first of all, they just wanted to know more about the Bible. They wanted to hear more about the Bible, to hear about the Christian faith. But right behind that was they were really looking for hope, and they were also looking for authentic relationships. Don't you find that interesting? Authentic relationships. So there's a lot of, as we know, despair, depression, and loneliness in that generation, and they're turning to Christianity for answers.
The NRB has really taken a strong stand for Israel. I know one of the things you've done is you want to use Judea and Samaria as opposed to the term West Bank. Why the strong stand for Israel?
Well, words matter. And so, so when I was actually teaching in a church one day, I mentioned the idea of Judea and Samaria, and somebody said, what about the West Bank? Like the West Bank was some different area, was some other area. So I actually put a map up to show them of ancient Israel and modern Israel, to show them that what is referred to as the West Bank was a political term that came out of the 1967 war, and it's really the West Bank of the Jordan River. And they were surprised. And so this is one of the things we're trying to do, is really educate people. And so using the correct terminology was important to us. So we put a resolution out asking all Christian communicators to use Judea and Samaria. And guess what? It also took off, and there are a number of states and other organizations that have passed similar resolutions.
Yeah. Is this a particularly important time to be standing with Israel right now?
Oh, I think it's a very important time to be standing with Israel, because I think we have to realize we're in the 250th anniversary of America, and our foundation is built on Judeo-Christian principles, morality, ethics. Our founding fathers quoted the Bible more than any other book as the source for their wisdom as they established our constitutional republic. And so Israel being under fire is really just one step away from America being under fire. But also as Christians, we know that our roots are in Judaism, and our roots are in this land, the land that God promised to the Israeli people, promised to the Jewish people through the descendants of Abraham.
Yeah. Final question, Troy. Also, Christian Zionism has become under attack. How would you respond to
Well, to some, I think I'm the most dangerous person in America, being a Christian Zionist. But again, look, the biblical, I think, evidence and the biblical reasoning is just there. God alone promised this land to people. I think we're called to support Israel. And to think about it, I think about it this way. Would I actually cut off the source of my strength and the source of my power, the source of my wisdom? No. We embrace it, we support it, and we protect it.
Troy Miller, president of the NRB, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us.
And please keep praying for wisdom for our leaders, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
And pray also for the protection of Israel and for the peace of Jerusalem. And remember, the God who watches over Israel and you and me neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you on Friday on Jerusalem Dateline.